Now as they went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her."
Good morning. Ryan. My name is Allee, and I go to Parkway South High School. Walking down the halls of my school, this is what I see. People talking, being friendly, forming relationships, smiling, laughing. But this is just on the surface. If Jesus walked up to a group of kids, I don't really think he would believe some of the hateful, disrespectful, and frankly non-Christian things that they were saying. Something interesting that I found is that these people that he would hear talking about all these things are people who proclaim themselves as Christians, and they would condemn people of their wrongdoings even though they would never condemn themselves of what they do every day. And that isn't really being a Christian by definition. In Luke, it's fairly obvious who is who. Martha is the self-proclaimed follower of Jesus, and Mary is the true follower of Jesus. If Martha were around today, though, I wouldn't really say that she isn't a Christian for preparing more for a visit from Jesus than she actually listened to him, because she isn't trying to ignore him. She's just so preoccupied with what she's doing that she doesn't realize that he's even there. Mary, however, drops everything that she's doing and decides to listen to what Jesus is saying, which is really what we should be doing as Christians. If anything is getting in the way of that, then it needs to be a priority to focus more on God. The main reason that Mary wasn't able to listen to Jesus was that she was distracted. And here's something that I can say on behalf of all the students here today. We have a lot of stuff going on. We've got practices, meetings, rehearsals, performances, grades, and then church. We've got all these things pulling and pushing us, and most of the time in every direction but the right one. And this is why kids fall out of the church. They don't think they have time. They lose interest because there are hundreds of other options that they could be doing that they may find more enjoyable at the time or have more instant gratitude. We lose sight of who we are as Christians or even decent people, and that's where those kids in the hall come from. They're people who believe in God but don't really find any reason to stay connected with the church. I want to bring up something Ryan talked about at our lock-in on Friday night. He gave us a challenge to be different. He told us not to conform to what other people say and do, to be Christians 100% of the time, no matter what people think of you. So I took that, and I thought about it for the rest of the night, and I came to this conclusion. You can call yourself a Christian or whatever you want, but unless you're always acting like one all of the time, unless you're speaking out against injustice, speaking out against anything that you don't believe in, that you don't believe is right, then you aren't acting like what you say you are. A few weeks ago in youth group, we talked about the perfect Christian and what that would look like, or what they would act like, and that puzzled me for most of the week. The question of what that perfect Christian was kept coming back to my head, and I realized something. I realized that there is no truly perfect Christian. But if I had to say what a perfect Christian did, I think that they would be the person who never stopped trying to be the perfect Christian. I think that was kind of what Ryan was trying to get at when he told us to be different. He was meaning that we're supposed to stick out. We're supposed to always be trying to be better. 1 John 4:1 says this about conformity. Dear friends, do not believe in every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. We can't just go with the flow and just do what everyone else is doing. We have to fight back against all of those things that are pushing us in the wrong directions. But we have to be completely different than any Marys or any Marthas have ever been, because if we don't stick out from the rest, then no one will hear our voice. Cantate is about to sing a song that fits really well with that. It's called With One Heart. And it talks about growing and learning about God together as a group. If the church is different from the rest of the world together as one, we can really change all of those Marthas in the schools. And I challenge all of you with the same challenge that Ryan gave us on Friday night. Be different.
When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world."
Good morning. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Kevin Steinhouse, and I am currently a junior at John Burroughs School. Well, about a week ago, I was told the prompt for this weekend's message, and Ryan said to me, "I want you to explain where you see Marys in your school." And if you have not read Luke chapter 10, 38 through 42, this is the weirdest question to hear coming from a youth director's mouth. I was like, there's a Mary Smith in 8th grade, there's a Mary Johnson in 9th grade, but I don't see them all that often. Is that really what you want me to talk about? And Ryan just goes, "Read the verse, Kevin." And I did, and so I was like, "Oh, gotcha." The real question is where I see people acting based on faith within my school. And so, as we read the scriptures today, we learned 2 very different actions when it comes to welcoming Jesus into our lives. Now, of course, everyone experiences times when we are like Martha, being so distracted by the everyday tasks of our lives that we do not take the time to listen to Jesus' teachings. But also, we are like Mary, and sometimes we become focused on the Holy Spirit in our midst. But before I talk about the Marys within my school, I'd like to give some background on the 2 verses. In the passage read before, Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42, verse 40 says, Martha was worried about all that had to be done. But when we look into the verse just read, it tells about how she came to Jesus when she heard of his coming. And Jesus knew that Lazarus was sick because they had sent a message to him. And Jesus had explained to his disciples, "I need to go to Bethany." And his disciples, as they usually were very confused about this. And they were like, "Jesus, everyone wants to kill you there. Why would you go back?" And he's just like, "Lazarus is sleeping, and I'm going to wake him up." And they said, "If he's sleeping, won't he wake himself up?" And Jesus very plainly says, "Lazarus is dead. I'm going to raise him from the dead." And so he goes to Bethany, and meets Martha there, and she asks him for his help. Jesus' response is, "Everyone who lives because of faith in me will never really die. Do you believe me?" The answer she gives is much different than what we saw in the verse before. She says, "Yes, Lord, you are Christ, the Son of God. You are the hope for the whole world." But when we look back to Luke, she's like a child almost, walking up to a parent and saying, "Why doesn't Mary have to do chores?" And then Jesus is just like, "Because she's doing the right thing, but you aren't." And I can just imagine her like crossing her arms and like, giving her a big pout and being, "I don't want to," and like that's how I see her. But then when you go back to John, her response is much more like a Christian. And it just shows that even Martha, someone who acts so childish, can be a Mary sometimes. And so each and every one of us has moments where we are distracted, but we also have moments where we are focused on the faith. And so that brings me to, where do I see Martha's in my school, or Mary's in my school? It's a good question. Cole spoke about what Jesus would see if Jesus came to his school. And I'm going to share with you where I do see Jesus in my school. So, where do I see him? I'll share with you 2 short little moments of almost everyday life at our school where I do see Jesus in our school. There are many more, of course, but these are my 2 favorites. Every morning, every student comes together in our assembly hall, and we listen to announcements about an upcoming soccer game or a swim meet or the robotics club meeting the next day. And then once the principal dismisses us, we all rush off to our first period class, grabbing our backpacks along the way, and cram through 2 little doors into the main building. But that's where I see him. Jesus, working through someone else, a history teacher named Dr. Smith, is holding open those 2 doors in order to keep the traffic flow moving. Every morning, no matter the temperature, if it's like 0 degrees, he's always there holding that door in order for us to make it through. I walk by every morning, and I thank him, trying to repay him with just a little bit of gratitude for what he's done. The other story I want to give happened this past week. After school, there are many sports going on and stuff, and one of them is intramural sports. And so I walked up to the lacrosse field, and then all the other students that were involved in it came up, and we quickly split into teams for ultimate frisbee. And as we did so, I took the frisbee and I threw off the frisbee, and the game began. Very quickly, it became evident who could throw, who could catch, and who didn't really want to be there. But whenever I got the frisbee, I would try my best in order to include everyone that was in the game. But that's not the point. About 5 minutes into the game, there was a long throw down the field. It was just floating there, and I was running after it as fast as I could. And being the athlete I am, I tried my very best to get to it, and so when it started curving, I dove and was unafraid of the AstroTurf burn I was about to get. When I dove, though, my finger tipped the frisbee, and it went farther away, and I missed it. So I was sitting there panting, trying to catch my breath from the long run I just had. And as I did so, a girl from 9th grade who I had never seen before today, or probably seen but never talked to before today, or that day, she walked up to me right in front of my feet, and she reached out her hand. It was a very simple gesture, but it meant the world to me. I accepted her offer and told her that it was a rare occurrence. Confused, she asked, "What, you missing the frisbee?" I was as flattered as I was. I just smiled and responded, "No, someone helping me up." And these are just 2 examples of the many ways that Jesus works through the people in my school to show their faith. Thank you.